Hello and welcome everybody to Around the Battleground. I am not hastily getting to my seat. I've been here the whole time. I am ready to go and prepared for this show. How is everybody doing today? We've got a great show, great day of Smite talk ready for you. We had some SPL matches today that we got a lot to talk about there. We've got some Smite matches coming up as well that we'll be talking about. Uh, Less so on the console front and on the SML front. Those things have just kind of been coasting along, going the way. We don't have any graphics this week. Hi-Rez, skill shot, whatever. They haven't been posting the same graphics that we were using. So unless I screen grab them or my producer screen grabs them, we just don't have them. I'm working on creating our own graphic versions of that, so we have that kind of stuff to show off. But for right now, we don't have that going for us. All right, so I'm over here to the side. You can't really see. I'm looking up the schedule for this coming week because it's been shifted around so much. I forgot who was going to be playing. But we have. We'll talk about SML quick. First off, there's obviously the front runner for NASML for a long time has been Armada. They've kind of had that spot locked up. Nothing's really changing about that. We do kind of have some movement in the middle of the pack. I think we can say without a doubt that Sanguine has emerged as the clear number two. I'm really excited and really happy to see all of the grinding, the work that the LATAM guys have put into the game and scrimming and everything like that. These guys are scrim monsters. These guys are scrimming, I think, almost every day, maybe even multiple times a day. These guys are nuts, and it's paying off for them. They aren't quite at Armada's level yet, but I think they have progressed so steadily from the start of the season that it's hard to see them not at least catching up in some strides to Armada and making those games more competitive. And then, SSG starting to look like a team again. SSG Gold, they're finding some wins here and there. They're not winless. They are not helpless or hapless. They've had their moments. And as much as everybody wants to kind of continue to shit on them and hate their existence, you got to give credit where credit is due. They have improved since week one. Cryptic, on the other hand, they've kind of middled. I think they've regressed a little bit. Sanguine's passed them by a large margin, and SSG's kind of closing the gap on them. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, this is still the first half. The big thing, actually, that we do talk about with the SML is they, because SSG Gold won, we don't have them being relegated and the combine team being pro. However, going into the next phase, the next split or whatever, the top two combine teams will move into the SML to compete. And that's great and all, but there's problems with that. And we kind of talked a little bit about it last episode when I talked to Fails, but that kind of got cut short. I've already covered this. You where did I know this? I'm losing my mind here, everybody. We did already talk that we did figure out that the bottom two, the top two of the combine will move up into the SML. But we've seen the combine have a week now. Brought a lot of people back in the NA scene. It was very competitive. We actually had about 4 teams kind of battling for the top 2 spots, and that was really good to see. EU kind of had some competitive fire kind of breathed back into it. As far as the EU side of the SML goes, out cold, still out cold. They're still not quite able to find the win. Simplicity is picking up their momentum. Flashpoint seems to have stumbled a little bit. I think that's kind of their MO. We'll see if they can recover. That's been that Flashpoint squad has struggled mightily in the past with not being able to put it all together in the end and when it counts and matters. I really hope that they don't fall into that same trap this year. I think they could this very well could be their year, right? So I don't want to see them mess it up or murky the waters. I want to see them kind of expand their Meta the God pool. You know, every week in, week out, we see Sibi play the Sun Wukong, play something different. Just change it up a little bit. I guess you could be saving their strats for land because they know they're going to make it. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, how EU kind of finishes out the season, going into that midseason invitational. All right, so with SML out of the way, we can turn our focus back towards the SPL. Today, we had United with their new ADC Imalidu, who replaced Vedium. Who Vedium had the I don't think he was kicked. The verbiage and everything that I'm seeing, it was an amicable thing where he wanted to go back home. He was feeling he wasn't enjoying the game anymore, and Imalidu was kind of looking for a way back into the scene. And it was kind of just something that fit both sides. It's a little curious though because Imalido just happens to have the visa and everything ready to go and is here to play, and it was just announced last week. So how long was this in the pipeline for? It's very, very suspicious. But everything that we've seen says that this was just something that had recently happened. It wasn't something that that him's been kicked for a while, and this was something behind his back or anything like that. So, I don't know. You can read between the lines if you like. I'm just here to. I'm not going to touch it. I don't think that there's anything that I can really extrapolate on one way or the other in that. But so we did see United play the Pittsburgh Knights today. Obviously, whenever you make a roster change, no matter who it is, you're gonna have a degradation in play. Very rarely, in a very few cases, have you had a competitive team, a pro team, a minor league team, whoever, uh, lose a player that they've been scrimming with, that they've been game planning with, that they've been strategizing with. Um, they take them out and replace them, even if it's like even if and a lot of people were saying that Emilito for Vedium is 100% easy, no brainer upgrade. And I don't know if I really would say all that at this point. Emilito hasn't played any this year, so he's got that rust factor. Obviously, he is a two-time world champ, right? But he hasn't played. And didn't find an SPL roster initially, whether or not he was looking for it. He found the SML as a support. There's all these question marks that I have on Imalidu that I can't rate him above Vedium. And after watching Vedium play, Vedium was playing really well on that squad. I liked him on E United. Him and Collis made a very good duo lane, and the things that he was bringing to the fights weren't bad. Was he setting the league on fire? No, but that's not E United as a team. I don't think any one of those guys is going to go out and set the league on fire with their play, but they all just kind of put their head down, do their job, and get wins and get results. And Vedium can kind of fit in with that. With Imalido here, you have a lot of question marks, but a high ceiling replacement as their ADC. Obviously two-time world champ. Did he get an MVP? I mean, we got the energy Chrono skin, which is for him. Chronos is kind of in the meta right now. So you would think that you have a potential superstar, and that's something that I think the E United roster kind of lacked. But I think ultimately that was for the better. E United was a group of guys who none of them were superstars. And that kind of worked in their favor, where their teamwork and their ability to work as cohesively as a group was their strength, was the superstar, was the extra oomph, right? Whereas with Emilito coming in, the shift inevitably is going to be into that duo lane, into that carry role, and position yourself so that he can carry you to W's and wins, right? And that fundamentally changes everything on the team, how they draft, how they, strategize around the map, how they just go about trying to win games, how they play the game of Smite. And I don't know that I like the change. I think a lot of people who are saying, "Oh, Imolito's there, it's gonna be a better team." I think it's short-sighted, and I think that's not breaking down all of the different angles. Obviously, it can be. I don't want to you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to, um oh my god, come on, brain, work. I don't want to take away, for lack of a better word, because I can't think of one. I don't want to take away from what Emilito can do in this team and his abilities, but I don't think this. I don't think right now, especially, that he will be able to come out and be the savior of this team and be the guy. Right? We saw we saw his first game out today against Pittsburgh Knights, and Pittsburgh Knights have been the fourth best team in the league right now. Kind of, they're on the outside looking in of Dignitas, of Rival. I think of Splice as well. Even if their record is showing better, I think that the Knights are looking on the outside of that group and have had a lot of issues. And I don't think all of them are fixed. One of the things that they did today that was different, that I think a lot of people have been calling for, if you really pay attention to the style of play of the Pittsburgh Knights and the former teams that the players have been on, Deathwalker has always kind of thrived in situations where you have the jungler applying solo pressure. That's how they've made a lot of their plays. That's how they've made Deathwalker have his gravitas. That's where he kind of gotten his name from, right? You look at Weaken and Cyclone back in the day, right? Weaken's the prototypical pressure the solo lane jungler, and adapting really isn't. Adapting as his own player. He looks out for himself. He's getting his farm. He'll go to get kills, but he's never been the guy to really sit and apply the pressure to solo lane specifically. He never did that for Demi. He didn't do that for Maniac. That was not something in his repertoire. So one of the things that we did see today, adapting, was over on the solo side, applying pressure, helping Deathwalker to really manhandle his lane and really control it. And it Deathwalker looked his best today that he's looked all season. I'll say that flat out right now. And I think that was no small part to that change in strategy. So that tells me that the Pittsburgh Knights are very self-aware. They know what their problems are, and they've had time to work on it. And they're like, okay, we got to try this. And I think E United was the perfect time to try that. Like, hey, they are a mid-level team. Could be, they could overtake us. Let's try something new. We got to get our shit together. Pittsburgh Knights 3-0 United in this set, but it doesn't feel easy at any point. It doesn't feel like the Knights are winning this game by the amount they probably should, especially with Imolidu coming in on short notice. The Knights still have their issues. They've made a great first step in addressing all of their issues with having adapting apply pressure to solo lane, which allows Deathwalker to really play it in his style and in his own way, and allows him to get his leads and everything like that. And when you have Deathwalker on his on a character who can bully and has a lead and can push his lead, your team's going to have a good outing. And I still want to see there's still a disconnect on the Pittsburgh Knights squad with cohesion and synergy and calls. It's not as bad as it is on say SSG, which we'll talk about in a bit. But there's still just this something not being right with the Knights, and I think a big part of it we saw last week too, or week before last, whatever it was, is adapting has grown super impatient as a jungler. And one of the things that separated him from the pack, back in the day was that he was a very patient, jungler. He wasn't a guy who was going to get impatient, blink in and your backline or try to make something happen and force it. He took fights. He fought. He forced some things, but he was never the guy who was just like, "Oh, I'm tired of waiting." And he's kind of transformed into that guy, especially against these top teams. And that's been one of their biggest weaknesses. We saw it today a little bit. It wasn't as bad, but the Knights are still they're a struggling squad, but they are taking steps to grow. And Millsy has had a pretty decent season, depending on his picks. He's got a that's another thing with the Knights right now is they have eclectic god pools, and though they can play things in meta and everything like that, they don't excel at them. And I think Zeros is kind of the poster child for that, where his mid god pool is very limited, and he's not breaking out all of these other picks that other teams are. He's playing the Yorm. He's got his Thoth, uh, and I think that holds the Knights back as a team as a whole because it kind of limits what you can do in the drafting process. I want to see Zeros have more of a god pool, or at least put him on other stuff. Like you look at what Maswell was doing last year at Worlds, just playing Opwash or Raijin or just Vulcan area denial gods. We saw Zero's Zeus today. It was interesting. It wasn't great, but it was something. I want to see more of that. It was a step in the right direction to see him play that in a competitive setting. They got the win off of it, and maybe that's just something that he needed to have happen. It didn't look great. It was dirty, sloppy, messy, but they got the win off of it. So maybe we'll see some other mid picks start to creep in for the Pittsburgh Knights. We'll see Zeros' God pool slowly expand. Right now, Zeros kind of feels like the Kalas of mids, where Kalas, when he first started out, he had about 3 gods in rotation that he really played. Everything off of that was kind of shaky. But now he's got a great god pool. He can play a lot of different things. He's nuts mechanically, so he put in the time to get experience on all these other characters. And Zeros is kind of in that same spot for me where I want you can't deny mechanics, um, but his just experience on these other characters in the mid and the way that he plays the game, just something needs to change. Something needs to happen to really allow him to take that step for his team. Uh, Vote popped off today. Pittsburgh Knights today. They didn't look especially great, but they didn't shoot themselves in the foot, especially bad at any one point, which is what they've kind of done in the past. And United is a weaker team, admittedly, again than the Dignitases or the rivals that they have been playing. So this was a breath of fresh air that was much needed, I think, from Pittsburgh Knights. I think the 3-0 doesn't quite reflect the game properly. Um, United put up a decent fight, and I think with Imolito moving forward, um, they could find some success, and they could threaten that 4th tier spot of the Knights. It'll be interesting to see how they perform coming up in the future here. Our second set of the day was Luminosity and Space Station Gaming. Space Station Gaming has had a terrible year. Last time out, I guess it was the week before last. Last time out, they had an 0-2 start. They had a 2-0 start over United and then got swept, and it was bad. That was the worst kind of smite we've ever seen. Maybe not ever seen. I mean, the envy game still happens, but that was if you are an SSG fan, if you're a Barra fan, if you are anything, if you have any feelings towards those players, that one hurt. Um, and so they needed to change in a big way. And after losing like that, that can break a team. That is a point where I don't know if you put every team in Space Station shoes at that moment, some of them don't come back. Some of them make huge changes. They lose the rest of the season and they can't make any wins. That is done. Their season dies right there. SSG got it in this is their second week under their Alpha Jackal as a coach. So they've had some time. They look a little bit better, but there's a lot that still needs to happen. Andy is playing at a much higher level as what we saw today. I think that was something that was really needed. Him and Jeff were really kind of waffling back and forth on playing decently and playing really bad. Uh, Jeff has played really well consistently. I feel like he's played at least average, and Andy has played today played above average. They had a lot of stuff come off his back. He was making plays. It was really good to see. Barracuda as well. Barra has not been the problem this year at whatsoever, and it's kind of a shame to see a lot of people throw shade at him and then see uh, people not recognize what he has been doing. Barra is a really strong ADC. He's always kind of been. And I think this year he's taken another step at being a great player. The problem being that the team around him let him down in certain points, and he as well. Like it all kind of funnels into itself. It's a mental thing with these guys at this point. Luminosity, they have looked good. They've looked bad. It's hard to really ascribe a value to Luminosity. They're not the top, obviously. They're not in the middle, but they're not exactly at the bottom. They have life. They don't look bad. As far as like bottom team in the SPL goes, they are pretty strong compared to what we've seen in the past, right? You know, we've seen teams not be able to find any wins. We've seen teams get absolutely stomped at the bottom every time they play. LG is taking games off the top. They took the game off a dig. They look like they can compete. They are just young, and I feel like that's the story of LG. They're young and getting better. SSG is old vets who have this mental block. They've got the yips, right? Today, their pick band's better. They have more strategy. They kind of go in there. LG did not have their finest day. They do find one win off of Space Station Gaming SSGing themselves. We saw it again. So SSG still has a long way to go. But SSG was very benefited by the fact that LG kind of had an off day today. Mollusk was kind of inting at will. It didn't make a lot of sense. They weren't all on the same page. I don't feel like Zelly had an especially good game this week. LG just something was off. It didn't feel right. Josh had some pretty great plays. Oceans has some great plays. Kiki, I don't know. Luminosity today just looked off, and yet they still kind of gave Space Station a run for the money. Except for the last game where Barracuda just went off and got like what 4 solo kills in duo lane. It was ridiculous. Ooh, if I break down this game and I really look at it and I try to, extract information, what do I think about SSG? Pittsburgh Knights, we've talked about all of their problems and if they're going to address them. They've taken a step forward with that. We can see that. SSG. Are they taking steps? Have they started doing it? Their first game, no. They still are not great at objective play, team fights. That is their biggest weakness, and that's one of the biggest parts of the meta and the season thus far is, you know, being able to bait those fights around objectives and take the objective and or take the fight and being able to juggle that and have target prioritization and know when you can go and when you can't. In space stations, shot calling and decision making or in their comms has been less than ideal. So they're they're looking better, but they also played Luminosity, who, them and Trifecta are unarguably the two weaker teams in the SPL just based off of, roster and performance so far. But Space Station should be better than them. They should be playing. I said that the 3-0 by Pittsburgh wasn't really convincing. It wasn't especially a stomp. United did put up a fight. Luminosity, I don't know. It's hard. They didn't exactly put up a fight, but that's also not to the credit of SSG. I feel like there were certain points where they were just kind of being slapped around. Obviously, the last game, Barracuda just man moded it. We've had I forget which game it was. I think it was game 2, maybe game 3, where Andy had his pop off and had a bunch of kills and setups and everything. But it's it's hard to say that Space Station Gaming has righted the ship just yet. They've still got some games coming up. They don't have any game. This was their last game this week, but next week they don't play. So they have a pretty decent um gap. They don't play again until week 11 and they play Splice. That's a big gap to really scrim, to get their heads in the game, and to really focus and tighten everything up, right? Then how they approach, so we're in week 8, so 9, 10. So then the next 3 weeks, how they approach the next 3 weeks is gonna be really crucial for them, and I think I don't know. I want Alpha Jackal to be able to like turn the ship around and get these guys all on the same page and bring SSG back up. But it's hard to say that they will because there's so much talent and everything in the SPL right now. 3 weeks off without a competitive game, that's a long time. And while you might be thinking you're doing the right thing in scrims and everything like that, you don't really know till you get out there in the competitive environment on the on stage and everything. It's kind of a double-edged sword, right? They have the time to sit down and take a break and figure out and really focus on the VODs and what's been going right, what's been going wrong. But they also don't play for 3 weeks. That's a long time. I don't care who you are. So it'll be interesting to see how SSG uh, evolve behind the scenes, right? It's like a time skip arc, right? They're gonna come back and they're either gonna be super buff and powerful or they're just gonna get their asses kicked by everybody else who is training on screen. You don't really know. But that's it for today's games. We're gonna look tomorrow. We've got 2 more matches. We've got Rival versus the United. Based off of today, Rival should 3-1, 3-0 this. Rival is the second best team, maybe third best team in the SPL. It's hard for me to tell between them and Splice. I think on different days I say different things. I think I've been saying it's Splice, but Rival's right there as well. They've been playing super well. I think I don't know. It's regardless 1A, 2A, 2B for Rival and Spice, right? So Rival playing against United. United have a day to go over tape to get, better. Emily Dew's second day out. Can it be better than his first? And this team, can they find their wins? And it'll be interesting. I don't know that I like United coming out of the gates and relying so heavily on the Kronos pick. I know it's being played across the board, but it's being played for very specific reasons and specific comps, and I don't think United Um, I don't know. United have Kalas, who is Fafnir, so put him on the Fafnir, and then you've got your big man Tings. You're gonna put him on a hunter. Does big man Tings play the hunters? When I think about him, I think of Discordia. I think of the Zhang Kui. There's stuff like that. And then obviously you've got some of his off the wall like warrior picks and things like that. But I'm trying to figure out if I've seen him play the hunters and if he's done well on them, and I can't really picture it. And that's kind of one of the bigger things that why Fafnir and Kronos have worked so far is because you put the Kronos there, you pick a hunter mid, and then you just go to town. Especially with like a auto attack based jungler or solo, you just get a lot of value out of that. It'll be interesting to see how E United kind of moves forward with their comps. I would love to see them move away from the Chronos going into tomorrow. I don't know that they will. Um, I don't think they'll find the set win over rival, but I think they can find a win. 2 wins would probably be stretching it unless they have some crazy strats up their sleeves, or unless rivals are going to be playing with a sub or something like that. Obviously that changes the landscape of everything pretty drastically, but rival should be the ones who kind of easily walk away with this victory. Uh, Looking at SK and Dignitas is the next one. Again, this should be a 3-0 or a 3-1 for Dignitas. SK has been playing for a while. Let's look at, has it been 2 weeks or 3 weeks for SK? Last week was the bye. They didn't play week 6. They didn't play week 5. So yeah, they have also had a pretty big chunk of change time between their last games. So, this will be a telling. Like, what have they been doing behind the scenes? What have they been practicing? How much better has SK got? Uh Knowing that they've had so much time off. I know I was just saying that it was a double-edged sword for SSG. Same thing with SK, but if it is a case where SK has, been practicing, they putting the hours in. I think when SK is playing at their highest, at their peak, if Paul is if Paul is playing at Paul levels, if Sam is playing at land levels from like the last year, if Belair is playing to the standard he set this year, and if Zap isn't feeding, or if that is feeding. There's like that fine line where like a certain amount of feeding, it's a negative, but then a certain other amount of feeding is like this giant positive boost to his power level. Not quite sure. There's a formula out there, but it's really complicated. So SK could come out here, and I think could surprise people. I think if there's one team outside of those top 4 to really give a top 4 team a run for the money, it's got to be SK. They've had their moments where they've looked unstoppable, but they've made mistakes. They've had games where people just didn't. I don't want to say didn't show up early in the season. It took Paul a couple sets to really get back into the swing of things. Belair has been phenomenal. Sam has been phenomenal. Neil has been great. Zapman has been. I am pleasantly surprised by Zapman. He's gotten better from last year. I think the meta kind of helps with that and kind of fits in with what he wants to do as a player and what his strategy for the game is. But Dignitas is no slouch. Biggie's gonna be game planning for SK. I'm really interested to see what the pick bans for this game are going to be. How Dignitas target, how Dignitas pick and play, and kind of the same thing with SK. This is the top team versus one of the top upstarts, the dark horse of the SPL right now in this SK squad. And so this would be the perfect point for SK to kind of break out some secret strats. kind of develop their own spin on the meta, whether it be, we saw the Pittsburgh Knights bring out your mid and it worked. And so is SK gonna bring out their own take on something like that? We see some picks we haven't seen before. We're gonna see them do any kind of starts or something that we haven't seen before. I don't know. I'm actually really excited about that SK Dignitas set. I think out of all the sets being played this week, that's probably one of my is the one that I have the most hype about. There's a lot. We're gonna learn a lot about SK and Dignitas. Dignitas. Are they gonna come in and play down to SK? Are they gonna, take any games off or plays off? And SK has looked like they can play with anybody in the league, and then they make mistakes. And Dignitas is not a team that you can do that against. So if SK come out and play a perfect game, I think they could beat this Dignitas team. SK kind of excels at that early aggression and that early, lead build. But Dignitas kind of excels at playing from behind the team fight stuff. And they can get right back into a game real quickly just because you made a mistake. So I'm kind of interested to see how those two clashing styles and everything how it all pans out in the end. Uh, like I said, at the end of the day, I do think it'll be a Dignitas 3-0 or a 3-1, but I don't think you can just write off SK like they don't have a chance. All right, so we're gonna look ahead to next Thursday's games. Next Thursday, Renegades will be here. Supposedly, we'll see if that stays true, but we will finally get a Renegades game, and they will be starting off their 2019 SPL Season 6 careers against Trifecta. I can't imagine a better team that I want to play is my first game into the league than the Trifecta. But it's also kind of a trap game. I say that, but then I look at this Trifecta squad. Weekend's been playing out of his mind. I think he is absolutely a top jungler this season so far. It's been nuts. And if the rest of his team kind of tighten it up, they are dangerous. Lasbra is shown moments of being dangerous in that mid position. He's starting. It's all starting to click with him when he plays well and he's not out of position and his decision making is good. He's looked good and looks like a proper mid laner. But he doesn't have that every game. Same can be said with Ionic, Wowie, Ducky. Ducky looked better than last year, but still not great. He had a couple good sets last time out, but it just wasn't enough to all kind of come together. Ionic has kind of been a weird factor. He's had some good plays, but I think almost accidentally so. And I know that's super disrespectful to say, but I don't know how else to say it because I've seen a lot of good things, but I've also seen some really iffy bad things that come out of him, like where he's just taking damage for no reason. You know, so I don't know. And then Wowie's been really quiet this year. I don't want to see him kind of step up, and I want him to have a pop off game. So could Trifecta beat this Renegade squad? Absolutely. They have been. I don't think they've been an awful team whatsoever. Uh, it's it's just unfortunate that none of these people have played with each other before. They had a role swap, and there's so much stuff that kind of goes into that. But they have come together pretty quickly. They got their new coach. Uh, Honestly, Trifecta and Renegades, if this wasn't Renegade's first game, and if it wasn't, if they had a lot more time to practice and live together and everything like that, I would pick Renegades. I think I might give this as a 3-2 to Trifecta. Maybe even less than that. Maybe a 3-1. Where God, a 3-0. I think Trifecta beat Renegade. I just there's been so many question marks around Renegades. Have they been playing? Have they been playing together? Uh, and Trifecta has gotten better each time they've went out and played. Unless Trifecta have an off day or if they've regressed, they should win this game. They should beat Renegades. I say that, and I say that with no confidence, and either side being able to pull out the dubs against the other side. And then next up there, we have Splice versus SK Gaming. That will also be a really good set. I feel like, depending on how SK do against Dig, they have a lot of film against the top teams and how they respond to them. And I think they can learn a lot from watching the Dig Splice set and then watching their Dig set, and seeing how Splice played them and then how they themselves played Dig. At the end of the day, I probably got to give this to Splice. They are former world champions. They took Dig to the limit, almost beat them, and if a couple more things break their way, they do. But Splice is just, they're in that upper echelon. They're clearly the second best or third best team right now, and it's so close between them and rival. I can't really call it, but across the board, you look at Splice, and I think that that's a better team than SK. But SK kind of has their own spin on it. The SK is the Splice of this year. I don't know. It's hard to say. SK kind of put their own stank on the game. Splice put their own stank on the game. Um, I don't know that SK is gonna be able to fight into the style of Splice. Uh, I don't. I think SK match up better with Dignitas than they do against a team like Splice. I think they might have some close games against Dig. They might, they might get 3-0'd by Dig, but I think it could be three very close games, or they get 3-1 and they win one, they lose, they win, then they lose, and they're all close games, except for one where they get blown out or something like that. Whereas I think against Splice, I think that they won't fight into the team as well, and could have a 3-0, and it'd be kind of like, well, it wasn't a stomp, but it wasn't, easy. I don't know. Like, it wasn't a stomp by Splice, but it also wasn't, that hardly contested by SK. It was kind of just, it happened. So that's something I could see going on there. It's hard for me to say that Splice don't win this set pretty cleanly, but SK could make it happen. I won't ever say that SK is going to outright lose. I think that they have a lot of potential, and I think that they, on a good day, can beat almost any team. I think no, on a good day they can beat any team in the SPL right now. But they just can't make mistakes, and they got to be 100% on point and on the same page. So we'll see how that all breaks down. I'm looking forward to that set. I really genuinely am. I think we'll have a lot better of an insight onto how to call that game, based off of their game against Dig tomorrow. But other than that, that could either change it for the better or for the worse. So right now we kind of split the difference and go like, well, there's a lot of potential there still, and so it's untapped. It's not even untapped potential. It's definitely tapped, but there's like how much more can be tapped. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens with the boys at SK. So that's it. That's all really the news and everything I have to talk about. We're still. I'm super excited for the Renegades to get here and finally see them play. Cheerio on lands, always a pleasure to watch. And oh my god, we're gonna have Raf and Funball duo lane with a Dardes mid lane. Oh, and a Nika solo. God, I can't wait to watch them play. I can't wait to see what they play. That has the potential to be a wonky ass team. And they're going to be playing on the new patch too. That's going to change a lot of things. X Ball is going to fall out of competitive play pretty quickly. So that's going to change the landscape for pick bans pretty heavily. He's not going to have the stun on his ult anymore. That basically kills X Ball. I feel like, and some people are probably going to hold on to it. I think I think we'll largely see him fall out from scrims at that point. But I think, one team might, oh well, we picked X ball before. Why would we stop picking X ball? But I think that the stun being off of his ult is now going to be really bad, and he's just going to plummet down. So you're going to see, some other hunters kind of get a shot. I think, we saw Apollo played by Ataraxia, and I think there are some other picks like that that are pretty strong but aren't being played. And after this patch, is kind of going to give some of those hunters an avenue to shine. We're also seeing, there was like a Bracken buff. You very well could see, Cherio playing a Bracken jungle. Renegades have, I think, this season and this split really is the best for Renegades because they are a bunch of dudes who, buck at convention. You look at Dardes, him in mid lanes. I really want to see what he plays. I think he's salivating at the idea of playing the Jormungandr mid, and other things like that. And then you've got Cherio, who, I don't think we've seen any Guardian jungles so far. So Athena's been underplayed. I think she can come back. We saw the Athena solo from Divios, and I think it won. It might not have. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but I know we saw it. So Renegades should add a very interesting wrinkle to everything. But with all that said, I still I can't call that trifecta game with them. It's just such a coin flip, being that they're like so out of practice. But I don't know. That's all I got to say for today. No interview or anything this week. Had a lot of the other stuff going on behind the scenes. Couldn't really get one out. I still got to go back and finish my interview with Fails, just because Discord cut out on us halfway through almost. So we'll definitely go back and get him. I've still got Taco on the docket now that she's back from vacation. I've got Aggro, who's going to be coming on at some point as well. And then now that all the dig guys are kind of settled in their actual team house, you can reach out and get those guys. They guys have kind of all already committed. And maybe we'll get SSG now that they have the 3 weeks off. Barra might have some time to talk and sit down, and we'll have another fucking 3 hour long talk just about the world and Smite. So I'll keep you guys updated on that. But that's it for me. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you next time around the Battleground. Bye, everybody.